Okay, Antonio Gardoni. From the infusion in alcohol of resins, woods, and roots and metals, Antonio Gardoni creates some of the solvents he uses to dissolve rare and high quality raw ingredients found on his trips. Steam distillation and maceration. Using steam distillation and maceration, he extracts the odorous components to create odors and fragrances together with a carefully chosen selection of the best raw materials available. He works at night when the light doesn't adulterate the chemicals and when the smells of the day disappear to leave space to a new experiment of shadows. Antonio Gardoni creates contemporary fragrances with ancient techniques and modern intuitions. From architecture and design, he learned how to build by layer and to think by subtraction. His perfumes are rooms to discover with their mood, texture, light, and color. Antonio divides his time between architecture and perfumery, following his passions, instinct, and taste to create unique and unforgettable projects, not forgettable, unique and unforgettable projects in both disciplines. And you can learn more, of course, at vogueprofumo.com, which I will pop in the chat. So Antonio, welcome. How are you doing? How's Brescia?
It's okay. We're entering a new lockdown phase from tomorrow morning. So it's our last evening of freedom.
Oh man, and you're spending it with us.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Let's not get too much into it. But yeah. So I mean, it's a strange situation in the universe at the moment.
It is. It is. It totally is.
We're going to talk about the light things and things that are very important for us, but not so important, and that's reassuring in a way. It's not. It's sometimes the subject we are going to touch this evening. I guess it's a light subject, and it's a subject where you can be as free as possible, where you can play with a lot of elements, and at the same time you are surrounded by a world that it's actually becoming more and more complicated.
Yeah. Well, how do you see the role of perfumery in that complicated world? I've been asking myself the same question, like what's the point of this, of what we do?
Well, you wonder sometimes. I personally think that sometimes I'm wasting my time, because there are so many more important things to do, and it would be great to be able to get involved in something more important for others, for the society, for the world, for the environment, for the politics, for anything, etc., etc. But then it's difficult. It's difficult for many reasons, and my reasons are not completely clear to myself. But I guess that the best I can try to do, and it's really an attempt and it's a struggle, it's to spread an idea, a possible idea of probably even more than beauty, that it's a very subjective term, an idea of freedom, an idea of freedom to express, and that's very key at the moment. Yesterday, yeah. I was doing yesterday my last physical lesson at university, and I teach history of architecture and design and stuff like that. And I was just saying to the students, they closed the theaters, they closed the libraries, they're closing down shops, they're closing down bars, etc., etc. And you must open your mouth, but not against, not always and only against, but to talk, to express your feelings, to express your knowledge, to confront, to increase the level of doubts, to be able to know that you do exist as a part of a system. So, I mean, there are a lot of things that can be closed down, but we need to don't close ourselves somehow. So, I mean, this opportunity, is, for example, to chat with you, to see all of you. Actually, thank you for being here. It's actually one small opportunity. It's not, I mean, we're not going to change the world in the next half an hour. We're probably not even are going to change our to a bathroom cabinet in the next half an hour.
Definitely
so,
not, because I'm locked at the computer, so there's no bathroom cabinet.
exactly.
You know.
But at least we know that we can say whatever we want.
Yeah, totally. And I think that, I mean, I think that your idea of it being a medium of expression and an expression for something is really what it comes down to with perfume. You know, art in general, it matters even in chaos, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's a playful activity. It's not, it's not. Well, it's serious, but it's playful. It's something you can do for a day, for 10 years, and it's something you can stop doing. And for myself, doing it or not doing it, it doesn't really change the way I approach it in my brain. I mean, it's almost like the usual critical separation between the way you think and the way you act. I think in talking about perfumes, and I produce. I think and I produce. Production is important because it's a tangible medium that you can share. It's a way to connect, etc., etc. But it's not as important as the thoughts behind it, and as the idea, as the that thing that keep you awake at night. Because you're there thinking, yeah, but what about if? And when you reach a conclusion, because you're forced to reach conclusions in life most of the time, and it's a good thing most of the time, you have to get to a point. And then well, I personally, it's where I usually step back from it. It's done. It's not, it's my thing, but it's not my thing as well. So but I really think that perfumes, odors, smells, whatever we want to call them, are something that doesn't even need to be smelled a lot of the time.
What do you mean by that? What do you mean?
I mean that it's something you know and you feel before even smelling it. I mean, it's something, and I'm not talking about storytelling, reviews, spreading and using the right words, but it's a crucial and a critical subject anyway, because it's not an easy one. But I think it's an abused word, but the concept, the conception of something, it's stronger than
it's more important than the object itself. Yeah.
But even with banal examples, you think about your rose, your brain rose, and that rose, it's much better, it's much more real than any rose you can smell somehow, and you need the real roses to grow up your idea of roses, etc., etc. So we need to interact with the physicalities, but then it's up there somewhere, and it's down in a bottle somewhere else.
Wow, we already got to.
Okay, let's talk about patchouli now.
Yeah. So, well, okay, let's talk about. I'm going to bring it down a notch and talk about Dula too, because you just launched it, and it was a collaboration, and I'd like to know a little bit about it, and sort of what what led you to create and launch this what is it called? The sequel to Dula 1.
Number 2. It's almost like a movie made in a chapter.
Exactly.
So who knows if the number 2 is the sequel or the prequel, but doesn't really matter. I mean, the whole Dula project started, again, chatting years ago with this person I met in the very, very early days of my experimentations with perfumery and this world. And back then, he was a kid. He is still a kid. He's very young. And he was one of the very first person that got back to me really helped me understanding what I was doing. It was very good in using words to express things that I wasn't able that much to express. I mean, and as naive as it sounds, that really helped me understanding what I was doing in reverse, you know. So sometimes you need someone else to read you in order to understand yourself, if it makes any sense.
100%, yeah, of course.
So he really helped me back then in understanding a bit more about the route, the journey I was starting to explore. And we remained friends. And he lives in England, and we met a few times over, a few beers and drinks, chatting, obviously, as well about perfumes, and discovering more and more a sort of a weird attraction to some elements that compose perfumery, not only as a formula making / marketing / communication, but as a sort of a mechanism that it can go beyond all the rules that you need to follow in order to distribute, sell, and sleep happy. So 3 years ago, we decided, okay, we chatted enough. It's time to do something. Let's get to a point, as I was saying. And one raw material that we were very obsessed in our chats is rose oxide. Rose oxide, it's an aroma chemical, very strong aroma chemical, that it's partially used in perfumery to enhance a certain aspect of a flower notes, especially rose. It's almost like the metallic part of a rose, but it's not so obvious to imagine, because when you smell a rose, you don't smell any metallic notes, any rust. But there is that type of note inside that flower. It's pushed to its extreme. So it's very, very, if you ever smelled it straight from the bottle, not diluted, it's a very aggressive almost material. So one element was rose oxide on one side, and the other element was, again, an element largely used in a flower composition that is called Rosiran super. Again, aroma chemicals linked to the flower of the flowers, the rose. And we thought, okay, let's push this. Let's push what we usually hide, or what other perfumers hide. And the fact that you hide it, it's actually a very wise idea, because you don't really hide it. You use it in a functional way, in a composition, to enhance certain aspects, etc., etc. But we wanted to play in reverse. So let's expose it's almost like when you do a building, or when you do a physical three-dimensional project. You have a structure usually supporting something or covered with something. So the idea was to show the structure and hide the skin and hide the surface. So we started playing, mainly on percentages, how much we can push these materials in order to be very explicit, and we almost call it pornographic, but it's really exposing something that it's beyond any, well, it's a critical field, but beyond almost any cultural or any mental filter. So it's just what it is. It's rose oxide and it's Rosiran super, bare naked in front of a. So behind them, there is a crowd. There is a crowd of viewers. There is a crowd of participants. There are other materials that I like, etc., etc. But I don't want to talk too much about only the materials, even if they're very key. So the very first Dula that came out last year was very strange. It was a very strange perfume for myself as well. I mean, I found it extremely bizarre, the result. Extremely interesting as usual, and I tried to do it a few times in my small perfume career, to work with someone else, because it's a very exciting job to be on your own in a lab, measuring measuring magics and to create some marvels. But sometimes it's so exciting to confront and to share ideas with someone else, especially for small realities like Vogue Profumo. You know, I'm not a big company. I don't have colleagues in the lab. I'm on my own. So and it's great. I love it most of the time. But sometimes you just wonder, does it make any sense of what I'm doing? You know, kind of, please talk with me, someone. So exciting process, etc., etc. And then we ended up having to do what we have to do in the majority of cases. We had to choose a name for it. And, you know, Freddie Albrighton, the partner in crime of this project, is a tattoo artist and a quite good and renowned bondage master. So he knows.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, he knows how to deal with pain.
Oh, wow.
Somehow. So then we thought, okay, let's call it pain. Let's call it douleur. And without thinking about the possible implication of this name that we discovered later when we started receiving messages from people saying kind of, you shouldn't play with certain feelings and conditions. And we didn't really want to,
people had an issue with douleur as a concept?
Because pain, it's actually a taboo. I discovered with this perfume. You know, it's so much easier, obviously, to talk about, you know, pleasure, beauty, love, you know, open fields of lavender and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, and when you meet, you know, when you meet a friend or when you meet a person, not maybe a friend, but a person, you know, you tend to don't tell him all the painful aspects of your life. You know, you try to stay on the polite nothingness of conversation. But actually, pain, it's a key element in our lives, and it's you know, and it's like yin and yang. It's black and white. We don't know what pleasure is without knowing what pain is. And pain has many different levels. It's physical pain, it's psychological, it's brain, it's social pain. But at the same time, pain is something you can play with, you know, to a certain extent. I mean, it's something you don't wish to anybody, you know, and the recent months are somehow, you know, a bit about that. You know, you don't wish pain to humanity, but you probably wish a more consciousness about not denying and not blocking the relationship you can have with pain, even when you suffer from pain, even when you cut yourself. You should somehow establish a relationship with that cut. That doesn't mean, you know, hoping it will heal soon and in a fantastic way, but it's something that belongs to you, and it's something that it makes you experience reality in a completely different way, you know. So, I mean, blah, blah, blah about pain and love and pleasure, etc., etc. So that's how Douleur 1 was born, but we were very scared, so we produced only 300 bottles, not knowing who could you know, encounter the taste of that. And almost a year later, we had to ask ourselves, is it something we want to keep doing? You know, it was really an internal experiment somehow. And then we decided, okay, let's keep doing it, but it will not be the same, you know, because pain as pleasure, as love, as life, it's never the same. So working with these very small production batches, we have the luxury to change ingredients from one batch to the other. You know, it's a very expensive and time-consuming process. It doesn't make any marketing sense, but you know, it's fun. So we decided to balance a few things, remove and add elements, etc., keeping the soul of Douleur, the two key materials I was mentioning before. And the new Douleur has a very strange, disturbing opening made of two very natural ingredients that are usually in nature considered beautiful, like mint and tea tree, but overdosed in perfumery, they can be very disturbing. So disturbing, it's again, disturbing, is it disturbing a bad word? I don't know.
But I know what you mean. I mean, because tea tree in particular, mint, I find it hard to imagine it being challenging, but tea tree can be quite challenging, you know, like, or disturbing, I guess, as you put it.
Yeah, but overdose mint on your skin, and then we'll see. I mean, mint is perfect in a field, in aromatherapy, in your mojito, it's in your shampoo, etc., etc. But when you put mint in a perfume too much, it's almost too high pitch.
Interesting. Yeah, I'll have to. We'll have to try it with you.
At least I find it. It's very. Always, it's very subjective and probably a bit nonsense.
Yeah.
But it's very extreme in its beautiful natural essence. I don't know. I mean, yeah. It's not as easy as it's
as one would think. Yeah, I believe you. I do believe, and I definitely think tea tree, even in small doses, I find personally quite challenging. So, yeah, but I mean, it's cool that you're playing with that sort of discomfort. You know, I mean, that's.
Yeah, no, the game, it's all about playing with this idea of discomfort, and I don't want to be too critical, but in a way, it's also an experiment somehow. But interestingly enough, as is a crowd of fans, so there are some real people out there that really likes it. That almost surprises me, because I do like it, but it's not objective, my relationship with it. And I thought, this is going to be a very difficult perfume. Nobody's going to wear it. Come on. And actually some people really like it, and that's fantastic. I find it fantastic. It's really kind of wow for me. But I don't know. The idea was as well to create something that you have your beautiful collection of perfumes, and you take Dula, you put it on the shelf. You will never going to use it, and you keep it there to remind you how beautiful are all the other perfumes you have. It's almost like having one of that middle-age skeleton sculptures reminding you will die one day.
Like the memento moris that they used to. Yeah,
memento mori that reminds you all your other perfumes are fantastic and beautiful and interesting. I'm against, I'm the opposite, and I'm here to make you love the others almost. So, but it's a bit less commercial definition I can probably send out to the world.
Well, so tell me about that relationship between commerciality and challenging. And another perfume collaboration you did, which is Cadavre Exquis with Bruno Fazzolari. I found personally, I found very difficult. I say this to you openly because I've told you.
Yeah.
It was a hard one, and nevertheless, it was really super interesting. But so, how do you deal with that sort of thing where you're trying to challenge people? And I know you like to challenge people, while also bearing in mind that perfume is something that needs to be worn by someone. What do you do there?
Oh, no, definitely. I mean, I'm not an artist. I'm not a performer. I don't do perfumes to push the provocation or the arty aspect of that.
Yeah, but you do a little bit. You do.
But I do it unconsciously and without really planning to do that. And especially, it's interesting you're mentioning the other collaboration with Bruno, because probably when I do things with other people, it's interesting because you have two egos, you have two ideas that really battle and really kind of needs to find their space. And even if both relationships were and are fantastic, easy relationship, very smooth and collaborative, there is something in a relationship that it's about conflict. And again, it's like pain, conflict. It's the other side of a coin of a friendship, of collaboration, of understanding, etc., etc. You know? It's throughout this conflictual meeting of people that you get these very conflictual results. So the difficulty that you experience maybe in wearing them, it's not really the result of a predetermined idea or project. It's more the result of that relationship between me and someone else. So it's interesting that some of the other perfumes I do on my own are not so
challenging. Yeah,
not so bad.
Yeah. No, I don't mean, and just to be very clear, I don't mean that it's bad. I mean that I find it challenging, but that's interesting, you know.
No, yeah.
In fact, that's good, I would say.
Oh, I mean, I think that bad, it's the other side of a coin of good. You know, it's not a bad word. Bad is not bad sometimes. We need the bad guy.
We do need the bad guy. We do need the conflict. We do need the challenging things. It's true. I mean, I like this idea that you're embracing these things that are more hard, you know. And I also, obviously, I come from, you know, North America, particularly California, where conflict is not embraced. You know, people shy away from conflict. You go towards politeness, you know. And in a way, it's quite repressive, you know, to be avoiding these difficult topics and also smells, you know. So
it's very civilized to avoid conflict.
Yeah,
but you know, I see your cat. You know, my dog.
Yeah, I've got two. I've got this one, and the other one's sleeping on my laptop box.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Your cats and my dog, they do argue with other animals sometimes.
Yeah. For sure.
And sometimes they do it in such a perfect way, you know, because there's no other filter if not, you know, my territory, my pee, you know, don't come close to my pee, you know, and it's fantastic. And you know, I'm not saying that we should fight, especially in these days, for our territory, because it's not what I meant. But you know, sometimes we should be able to say no, at least. No, it's the first way to create a conscious conflict. And conflict, you know, can be a very civilized conflict. You know, you can have a civilized conflict. You don't have to shoot each other all the time, I guess. Well, I don't.
I don't know. I can't even. I mean,
Okay.
civilized conflict ends up.
It's a dangerous land. Let's stop.
Yeah. We'll talk in a month where everything's nice and calm again. Well, so tell me about the collaboration with Bruno, and tell us about Cadavre Exquis. What's the concept? What made you guys decide to do it? You know.
Well, back we're talking about 5 years ago. When was it?
It was a while ago. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I think
a while ago.
Yeah.
And that came from. I mean, I was entering the perfume world, and I was noticing that a lot of perfumers were really jealous of their skills and their techniques and their intuitions and where they source raw materials and blah blah blah. And I found it, you know, intriguing as a storytelling PR folder. But a bit boring to happen in the third millennium. You know, I found it a bit kind of, oh, come on, you know, we are not a lonely poet from the 18th century writing poems in a field with a duck feather, I don't know, whatever. You know, we live in a world that is connected, and you know, we are colleagues. So you know, with my architect colleagues, I do discuss things, and if I need some help, I call them asking, where do you buy some good concrete? I don't know, you know, things like that, and they usually reply. In perfume world, it's slightly more tricky. You know, everyone stays in its own little island. So I thought, okay, let's shake it a bit, and you know, and find someone that wants to share this project with me. In the beginning, the idea was to have 4 perfumers on the project, But it was difficult. It was difficult to find a colleague that was willing to challenge, because what you are doing when you're doing something like that, it's okay. Me, Antonio, and Vogue Profumo are building the Vogue aura, you know, and we are doing with a lot of effort, with a lot of struggle, with our intuitions, blah blah blah. And I'm not wanna destroy that, you know. I'm just building it, so it's very delicate. It's not easy to bring someone else along and mix the things. So a lot of people was really scared about how much something like that will affect their brand identity, as you call it. You know, well, I think that identity is stronger than brand identity. So I thought I'm up for it. And Bruno as well. So we played along the game, and it was literally a game, because the name of the perfume, that is Cadaver Exquise, comes from a surrealist game where it's a very fun little game. You fold a piece of paper and you draw the head, and when you fold it, so I don't see the head, you draw, and I draw the body. And then I give it to you, you don't see the body, and you draw the legs. And then you unfold the piece of paper and you see this creature made of different parts drawn by different people. So the idea was okay, let's swap, you know, San Francisco, Italy, samples, small formulas, and you add something and I then add something else, etc., until when we get our monster, our Frankenstein coming out of this bottle. And that's what happened. We created a Frankenstein as well. Back then we challenged a theme that we thought didn't really belong to our taste, that was a gourmand perfume, so perfume involving vanilla, chocolate, all these beautiful materials that either me and Bruno are not very willing to introduce in our permanent collections, and we played around. But again, collaborations are a great playground where you can, if you know let's call it the serious, solid production of Vogue Profumo, you know, it speaks, I read, a sort of a language. But, you know, I'm not so bidimensional. Sometimes I wanna, you know, I would love to have a long blonde hair one day, you know. So, you know, and collaborations are a sort of an excuse to wear an Halloween costume and get out and have fun, fooling yourself and the others, and playing with roles and identity, etc., etc. So it's a good exercise to take a piece of ourselves. Somehow it's to take ourselves not so seriously, you know, kind of, okay, I'm doing something, I think it's good, it's solid, it's interesting, someone's love it, fantastic. Okay, let's do the opposite, you know.
Yeah.
You know, it's, you know.
Well, and I like that you picked the Gourmand because you were both uncomfortable with introducing that into your own collection, because that's already, you're at a sort of discomfort, you know, as a perfumer. Already you're like, oh crap, like this is a field, you know, this is an area that I haven't mastered, you know, because I avoid it, you know. So that's cool, you know. I think that's really interesting. And I do agree that
we probably hoped to learn something from each other about Gourmand, but
did you?
Not really. I like the result. I actually have to say I like a lot the result.
Yeah.
But I will not be very good tomorrow if I go to the lab and I will create a big vanilla toffee, caramel, and tonka potion. I don't know.
Why do you think people, I mean, there has been, it's weird because you notice these themes and these trends in the perfume field, and at least on the chats and whatever. And for some reason, there has been this really verbal and loud dislike of gourmands. I don't understand it. I don't understand why. Do you have any understanding behind that?
I think that gourmand are considered girly perfumes somehow. I mean, perfumes not only with a sort of gender connotation, but with an age that is between 12 and 22. I don't know.
Oh, I see. That makes, that's why I like them so much, because I'm 50.
So if you are a pretty young girl, you love to smell like a vanilla.
That's me.
And it makes a lot of sense because you like to be edible. You know, it's that sort of thing. I mean, I stop here, but it's that. You know, and the same male counterpart at the same age, you know, wants to smell, you know, very fresh and masculine, you know, all the links and acts, the odorants, you know, it's that sort of performative aspect of perfumery that is very interesting. And then when you grow up, you learn, you know, to use your boyfriend or girlfriend perfume, no matter, you know, so you play with that, and it becomes more interesting, and you discover your dark side, so you discover resins, and you discover things, etc., etc. But you know, a good vanilla is a good vanilla at any age for any gender.
Yeah.
And I quite like some Gourmand. It's something I don't feel comfortable playing with. It's interesting because it's not a type of perfumery, I think, never, you know, there's something I don't like, I will never wear them, etc., etc. It's something I feel I don't master that good. I mean, I don't know. I'm not so good at doing gourmand.
I'd be curious to smell. I mean, well, Cadavre Exquis is a gourmand, you know, but I'd be curious to smell, you know, a full Antonio Gardoni version of the gourmand. You know, like how do you envision this young girly sort of, you know, speaking in archetypes, smell?
Oh, very difficult, but in a way, you know, Dula, it's quite gourmand as well because we place a lot of candy floss. But it's a disturbing gourmand element because, you know, burnt sugar and blah blah. But I don't know, the young girl perfume, you know, something extremely strong and powerful because the young girls are the future of the universe, you know, and so you know, something not even empowering because they don't need to be empowered, but you know, something that will just represent their strength, you know, and the hope that they're bringing to humanity, you know.
Yeah, and as the father of two young girls, you know this very well.
Oh yeah, no,
I mean,
you know, I'm growing warriors, you know, it's and I really had the luck to discover how women are so much better than us. And it's almost embarrassing because you don't want to be so schematic. But oh yeah, you know, it's a different world and it's a fantastic world. So I mean, young girls, they don't even need to wear perfumes. They don't need to shower. Sure. They don't need to do whatever. Do whatever you want and conquer the universe that it's yours already. That's the name of the perfume, and it's empty. It's completely
empty.
That's
awesome. That's awesome. I love that. That's cool.
And I'm not saying feel it with tears and feel
yeah. No, it's just empty.
That's a different story.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. What do you, so by the way, everybody, don't forget that you can pop questions in the chat. Antonio and I love to talk, so we will definitely keep talking, but if there's a moment where you have a question for him, please. Well, actually, Donna asks, candy, floss, and vetiver. Donna, what's that in reference to? Is that in reference to?
Just adding to your conversation about your idea for the concept for the young girl's perfume, how it should be strong, and I thought that vetiver would work with that. That's all.
Floss and vetiver.
It's really inspiring. This is great talk, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you.
There we go. Or empty. So wow, I lost my train of questioning, but oh no, I muted myself. I said I'll ask a dumb question and then let you go from there. But what are you working on right now? Now that you've left too.
I'm working. I mean, it's I'm working first of all, but it's already something these days. Yeah. So it's I feel so blessed and lucky with all these things, you know. And so even the fact, you know, when someone is asking you, what are you working on? You know you're so damn lucky to have an answer to that. So
yeah.
Anyway, sorry, it's a strange week this week. Anyway, I'm working on a super exciting project. Don't we all have exciting projects?
I don't have any exciting projects. I'm just at home with my cats and my husband. It's awesome.
It's a project actually that it's linked to music. I've been contacted more than a year ago by the manager of a band in the UK, and he introduced me their idea that was, okay, they're going to launch a new album at the end of 2020, and they would love to have a perfume to go with it, not physically. I'm not saying kind of you buy the CD and you get the perfume, two for the price of one, sort of thing. It's more kind of a building and creating a perfume that will represent somehow the mood of the music and vice versa. So I found it super challenging and super exciting, because it's not only about, sometimes, but these happen in every discipline, it can be so self-referential. So if you do perfumes in order to make perfumes, to sell perfumes, to consume perfumes, to talk about perfumes, and it gets boring. So sometimes you think, okay, fantastic, a record, let's do something with musicians instead of perfumers. And this new group comes from the singer of a very famous band in UK, that are the Cooks, and his name is Luke, with his wife, that is Ellie Rose, and their new band is called Duo. So it's about love, obviously, because husband and wife singing, and it has a retro 70s feeling, the music they're doing. It's very interesting. The album will be ready around the middle of December, and so hopefully the perfume. But the interesting thing was, for the very first time, I had to pretend, because you never know if you do it right or wrong. I had to pretend to interpret something that was related to a word that a lot of times we connect to perfumery due to the language, the accords, the notes, we share a bit of language between perfumery and music, but at the same time they are very different. And the idea behind this perfume was playing on two levels. One level that was love, but love my way. I mean, and love the way their music was going on, was playing. So something very dense, something not. It's not. I mean, you can have love as I'm running in a field in spring with a full sun shining, etc., etc. My idea of love, it's more, I met you in the middle of the wood with a little Red Riding Hood, and it was the end of the day, and it was dark, and both of us were lost, sort of thing, and we saved ourselves from wolves and creatures, etc., etc. So, that's my idea of love. That somehow matched their music about love. Was a very late night club music. So I thought, okay, let's use some physical elements I connect to love. That, for example, for me, resins drops, for a lot of people are connected to tears. For me, are generally connected to body fluids, to stay generic. It's a gift from nature that drips from the trunk, from the branches. And I find it extremely physically lovable and, sexy almost, let's say that. So resins and woods on one side, and humid flowers on the other side. Together with these notes, the idea was I want to do a perfume with no opening, with no top notes. Because I wanted, again, in love, you can flirt with someone for ages and then eventually something will happen, or it just happened. And, you know, last tango in Paris, you don't need to talk, you know, sometimes it's there. It's solid. It's something solid connecting solid people. Mm. So there was this idea of kind of let's jump preliminaries or let's jump flirting and let's get into love. I'm not only talking about physical love. I'm not talking about sex. I'm talking about connecting, boom, you know. And at the same time, I had this going to a club idea, you know, and when you go to a club, you start, you know, dressing up, putting makeup, gathering with friends, a few drinks at home, and then you go out, you queue to the club, you enter. I wanted to skip all that, and suddenly magic, Alice in Wonderland, you are in the club. The music is super loud, people are sweating, doing whatever they want, etc., etc., but no queue for the club. So no flirting and no queuing. These ones are the two elements I really wanted to put into. I know it doesn't make any sense, sorry.
It makes total sense. Are you kidding me? It absolutely makes sense to me, especially the no queuing. No flirting, I don't know.
A dream.
Yeah. So listen, we don't have too much longer, unfortunately. It's always passed so quickly. But Christopher has a question, which is how much of your own distillations and tinctures make it into your fragrances versus source?
Legally zero. I mean, I use my own distillation and extractions and macerations for the very small bespoke works I do on request for certain clients. And I do, but even more than that, I do them in order to find out things when later I use applying commercial materials due to regulation. I mean, I can't infuse some Earl Grey in vodka and put it in my perfumes, sadly. Yeah. You know, it's sadly or luckily for your skin reactions and for the regulations of the unit. So we can play at home with that, but no. So the 0% again, I mean, it's very important for me to do that in order to know what I want from the raw material I'm going to buy and use. You know, I've been distilling a lot to understand how you can challenge a raw material and then to learn what is the raw material that matches my expectation and my experiments. So it's a very technical labor somehow, and I learned a lot from it. It's probably the thing I learned the most.
Yeah.
Because when you learn, at the same tree, if you distill it in spring, autumn, winter, summer, it has a different smell, etc., etc. So you want that between spring and summer smell of that cypress, but you can't find it in a raw material. So then you try to reconstruct it with proper raw materials, etc., etc. It's very exciting. Some tinctures, some experiments, I do use them in small amounts in small non-commercial projects.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And then Christopher has a follow-up, which is with smaller suppliers. I guess you mentioned this in another interview for ingredients such as the tuberose in Mai. Do you have concern that they won't be around forever, and then potentially your perfume will be without a key ingredient?
Well, I mean, the thing is, I mean, we had a lot of disasters a couple of years ago with vetiver due to floods in Sri Lanka, Haiti area, etc., etc. So the quality of it wasn't the same. The price of it was extreme. So natural organic materials are challenging because you can't assure a consistent result. And one of my perfume that is called Mai is on one side, I wouldn't say suffering from that, but it's very dependent from that factor because 80% of the materials in the perfumes are natural and some are very critical materials like tuberose, like others, like vetiver. And every batch of Mai I produce smells different, even if the formula is exactly the same. And I do small batches of 400, 500 bottles. So sometimes I receive messages and emails saying kind of, I got my second bottle of it smells different. And, you know, my first reply is, lucky you, it's kind of, but it's not correct. It's not correct. So I do explain why it does smell different. And, but it's something that it's a very, very critical subject, because on one side, I would love to have a perfect, constant product that will not ever change, pure Lancome style. You can throw bombs on the planet, but this perfume will be the same. And on the other side, I'm so excited every time I reproduce the same perfume to smell it, and between me and myself say kind of, nicer or worse. Nicer or worse, according to what, I have no idea. But and recently I tried to challenge the original formula of in order to increase some of the critical materials and to make it somehow, I mean, it's interesting because I was struggling with this formula because every time I was smelling slightly different. And I thought, okay, or two options. Either I remove some of the naturals or I increase some of the naturals. Because the more naturals you use, the less they will be challenged by their neighbor material somehow. They make a stronger family. So I thought, okay, let's increase the real nature of this perfume. So it will change, but apparently from my recent experiments, it will change less. So it's interesting, like within the problem, within the technical problem, you find the solution without going against the nature of the product, but actually pushing and increasing its difficult level. So the next you're going to smell will have a different color label because it's a sort of new generation. But materials are exactly the same. Percentages are 99.5 exactly the same, but it's again different as it has been in the past 5-6 years of my production, and yeah, it's exciting. I love it.
Christopher asked if you ever think of putting vintages on the bottles, like batching them,
Oh, but yeah, I mean, the problem is that I always underestimate my production. So I produce small amounts, mainly for economical reasons, because I don't want to invest trillions in big batches. And then every time I get very surprised because I sell them. So I get to the end of the batch and I have, oh my God, I have to do a new one. It's that sort of emergency state, my practicalities. So I can't afford the luxury to save some juice to make it vintage, because when I have it, I need to use it and bottle it and send it.
Yeah, but you could put like the year, the batch, like this is 2017's on all the ones you make in 2017. I mean, I don't know, that's a way of...
Yeah, no, in the past months, while I was studying the evolution and the different things, I had to ask a friend if he had one of the early bottles, because I don't have a single one. And he gave me his bottle. And obviously that bottle aged as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Years. So it's an element that you control till a certain extent, especially with the nature of the perfumes I do, kind of, it will smell slightly different from the previous batch, but in 6 months will smell different again. And in 5 years will smell different again. Yeah. So it's, again, it's life, you try to teach something to these formulas, but then they do whatever they want.
Yeah, totally. There's, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but there is also a special nerdery, a place on the internet that is very devoted to this sort of hyper nerdy, like vintage thing, which I think it's really cool, and I think it really honors the material, but it can also really go down this rabbit hole of sort of obsession where you want everything to be exactly what you expect it to be, and things just don't go that way in perfume.
I mean, it's a technical curiosity as well. I mean, I would love to taste the the whiskey coming from the same producer from day zero.
Yeah, to today. Yeah.
Aged 150, aged 149, aged 104. Now imagine, you know, kind of, and it's because it's the same, but it's completely different. And I understand when people get very obsessed about, you know, the original one, the variation, the reformulation. I mean, it's a nerdy game, but it's a nerdy game that really help you understanding the multiple facets of a product.
Yeah, it's connoisseurship, you know, it's right. It's
and when you love one of them more than the others for many reasons, fine. But you know that you can find, you know, it's, let's talk about Guerlain. You know, you have some fantastic Guerlain classics that changed a lot throughout the years, and some of them are still very enjoyable, in my opinion. It's the same excitement. You know, do I really love the 50s bottle I bought for a few thousand euros because of the content, because of the struggle to get it, because of the price? Does it really smell as a lady would have smelled it in 52? Or, you know, it was under the sun, it was bad, you know, blah, blah, blah. So it's literature, imagination, desire to understand,
storytelling,
nerdiness, storytelling, it's everything. So it's, come on, let's do it more. I mean, it's it doesn't harm, you know. If we spend our hours analyzing the differences in reformulations, that means that we are good people, I guess. We deserve.
I can think of worse things to do for sure, like get your guns and go protest, you know, forget it. Yeah. Well, good. Well, so guys, we're 10 minutes past because I wanted to make sure we gave Antonio the proper amount of time that he warrants in our 1 hour chats. I think we should do a follow-up. Antonio, I miss you. It's nice to see you.
Next time I'll be on time.
No, it's okay. You know, it's you know, California time. It's always 10 minutes late anyway here. But so for everybody who's been here, I really thank you for joining us. If there's any last things you want to say to Antonio, please unmute and say hi. In fact, please unmute and say hi, just so or say goodbye, I guess, so we can all enjoy our day. I don't know, Antonio.
Really inspiring. Thank you. I've been grabbing the odd thing that I have and sniffing along, and I'm like, oh yeah, tea tree and peppermint. This has been really fun. Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you a lot.
All right. Well, super, folks. Well,
hi. Thank you. Sorry I was late.
It's okay, Wendy. Nice to see you.
Well, I was the one late today.
No, we're all late all the time these days. So, folks, we did record this, so I will be editing this and putting this on the internet, so you can catch up if you missed a part of it and everything else. So,
thank you, Saskia.
Yeah. So, Antonio, thank you so much.
Saskia. Thank you, everybody. I mean, it's just an easy, simple pleasure to see your faces, your names, to see Saskia and Matt in the past few months, as we used to do due to this damn pandemic condition. So it's just great to know that we do exist. And thank you so much for the patience for my delay at the beginning. And really, you know, whenever you want, send me messages, bother me by email. It takes me a while to reply, but I'm happy to talk. You know, it's a busy life, so, you know, not every day I have a lot of time, but really, I believe in sharing, and I believe in the community, and Saskia is the queen of this community. So thank you, Saskia, for making all this possible.
So true.
Come on, it's true. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, you know. No, come on. You'll cut it in the edit.
Yeah, I'll cut it in the edit.
Okay.
So you can compliment me for a minute and then I'll just cut it all out. All right. Well, hey, so for those of you in Hungary and Armenia and South Africa and LA and Atlanta, Toronto, we're thinking of you, and don't forget that we are all just human in the world, and a lot of good can happen. So